I woke up at dawn to the sound of metal screaming. At first, I thought it was some distant construction project, but when I stumbled outside in yesterday's clothes, I froze. Sparks flew as three men in reflective vests sliced my fence apart with bolt cutters. An excavator's diesel exhaust burned the morning air, while its bucket carved through rows of tomato plants my daughter and I had tended for years. By the time my brain caught up, an 8-inch water main lay across my garden like a steel scar. $15,000 of landscaping and 3 years of soil preparation shredded in a single morning. Delilah Thornfield, president of our HOA, stood there with a clipboard, pearl necklace glinting in the sunrise, and a smile that made my blood turn cold. She waved papers that looked official but stank of forgery. Community Water Project, she announced like a judge handing down a sentence. Your property was in the way. She didn't know who she was dealing with. I'm Marcus Blackwood, 52, retired Army Corps water engineer. I've managed dam systems in valleys where one mistake could drown thousands. Now I was supposed to enjoy peace on the 2 acres my grandfather left me, a slice of paradise in Pine Ridge Estates, Colorado. My daughter Elena visits every summer. She's 16 and has been building these gardens since she was 8. Those men weren't just crushing plants, they were trampling her dreams. I warned Delilah that my grandfather's deed carried perpetual water rights and barred any utility easement without owner consent. She smirked, daring me to stop her. Within days, she filed complaints with the city. By Thursday, a smug inspector from her husband's department declared the work perfectly legal and handed me a $2,500 citation for interfering with municipal projects. Friday came with a restraining order, accusing me of threatening workers. I hadn't even raised my voice. It was clear she planned to bleed me dry with legal fees until I surrendered. But I wasn't the kind of man who backed down. I hired Janet Rodriguez, a property rights attorney who knew every inch of easement law. Her first discovery was gold. The HOA's permit application listed my property as vacant municipal land. Fraud, plain and simple. Then I remembered a clause in my grandfather's deed. Any unauthorized utility work would void the city's access to our water rights. Rights tied directly to Clearwater Springs, the community's main source. Suddenly, Delilah's little victory turned into a catastrophic misstep. We got an injunction within 48 hours. That should have stopped everything. But my cameras caught Delilah returning at night, directing crews with a walkie-talkie from her BMW while they buried more pipe, extending 200 feet beyond any permit. She wasn't just trespassing, she was stealing land through infrastructure. I downloaded the footage with a grim smile. She had no idea how badly she'd overplayed her hand. Meanwhile, Elena uploaded clips online. At first, a few dozen people watched. Then it exploded. Tens of thousands of views, comments pouring in from across the country, each one another HOA horror story. Pine Ridge's dirty laundry was trending. By the weekend, neighbors knocked on my door with cookies and stacks of records. Florence Hartwell, 73, revealed hand-drawn maps showing unauthorized surveys across dozens of properties. Others had caught workers measuring sheds or sneaking soil samples at dawn. This wasn't random harassment. It was organized theft disguised as improvements. When Delilah pushed eminent domain through the city council, I expected theater. What I found was a rigged court. Aerial photos made my land look like wasteland, shot in winter to hide the fertile soil. She declared my gardens blight, poisoning property values. I stood calm and let Janet deliver the bombshell. Her husband's construction company had pocketed over $200,000 from HOA contracts, all without legal bidding. The council should have rubber-stamped her motion, but live streams showed her corruption in real time. 3 members abstained, 2 voted against, and the whole scheme collapsed. That night, Delilah cornered me in the parking lot. Her eyes glittered with venom. "You don't know what you're messing with," she hissed. "Accidents happen to people who push too hard." In the passenger seat of her idling BMW, a man with a camera snapped photos of my truck. It wasn't HOA politics anymore. It was intimidation. Days later, crews severed my water line at dawn, installing a valve that throttled my pressure from 60 psi to 12. Not enough to shower, let alone irrigate. They demanded $8,500 to restore it. Extortion, dressed up as infrastructure. But they just triggered my ace. Deep in dusty county records, I found proof that my grandfather's rights weren't to some municipal well. They were tied directly to Clearwater Springs, supplying 73% of Pine Ridge's water. Even better, the springs belonged to a rancher named Bill Morrison, who was desperate to sell. Asking price, $127,000. While Delilah tried to choke me, I quietly negotiated the purchase. Elena nearly burst with laughter when she read the documents. Her videos documented every step while I signed the contract. Within weeks, I would own the very source of the community's water. And Delilah, who had been plotting to buy the springs herself, would be left grasping at air. But she wasn't finished. Flyers appeared on windshields accusing me of being a dangerous veteran dishonorably discharged. Lies. Fake social media accounts painted me unstable. She even staged neighborhood safety meetings where she called me a threat. Police received anonymous calls about my suspicious behavior, watering my garden. Meanwhile, a black SUV with tinted windows parked outside my house, its occupants photographing Elena's car with professional surveillance gear. She'd escalated into corporate-grade espionage. Elena kept recording. Florence rallied neighbors. Dave, a local plumber, showed me schematics proving Delilah had deliberately degraded infrastructure to create artificial scarcity, charging premium rates for weaker service. Piece by piece, we built a war room in my garage. Charts, maps, financial records stacked higher than my workbench. We weren't just fighting an HOA anymore. We were dismantling an empire of fraud. Then came the meeting at Starbucks. Delilah slid into the booth across from me, her purse clutched like a weapon, and offered $75,000 in cash if I dropped everything. When I refused, she leaned close and whispered threats about child services, custody battles, and ruining my business with fabricated military records. Every word recorded, every threat preserved. She didn't know she was digging her own grave. By September 12th, I owned Clearwater Springs. Legally. Fully. And on the 18th, at the annual HOA meeting, I carried the deed in a manila folder. The room overflowed with residents, reporters, and investigators. Delilah strutted in with a 50-minute PowerPoint about infrastructure modernization. She bragged about securing funds to purchase the springs. I stood, placed the folder on the podium, and opened it. As of last week, I said, my voice steady, I own Clearwater Springs and all associated rights. 78% of Pine Ridge's water flows through my property now. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Delilah's face went pale. Janet explained the law to everyone. My rights predated every municipal contract they'd ever signed. Delilah shrieked that I was holding families hostage, but the irony wasn't lost on anyone. The woman who'd weaponized water pressure against her own neighbors was now at the mercy of the man she'd tried to crush. I gave her a choice. Immediate resignation, restitution for fraud, or termination of water supply in 30 days. The vote wasn't close, 403-9. FBI agents and the state attorney general's investigator stepped forward with subpoenas as Delilah's world collapsed in front of cameras. She screamed, threatened, and stormed out. It didn't matter. The reign of the suburban dictator was over. Within 2 weeks, Pine Ridge elected a new board. Fees dropped, transparency rules were passed, the community healed. Delilah pled guilty to embezzlement and conspiracy, sentenced to federal prison. Her husband lost his contracts, his job, and eventually their house. Justice came swift and merciless. But revenge wasn't the end. The true victory was transformation. I signed a 15-year fair water contract with the community. We built educational gardens, hosted workshops, and turned the land Delilah tried to ruin into a gathering place. Elena's documentary about the battle won awards and funded her college. Florence created a statewide network for HOA accountability. The legislature passed laws inspired by our case, protecting thousands of families from abuse. Now, when I walk through rows of thriving vegetables, I hear children laughing where bulldozers once roared. The scent of compost replaces the stink of diesel. The taste of spring water, pure and unthrottled, reminds me every day that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's building something stronger, something that outlives the corruption that tried to crush you.